For decades, conversations about Asia's economic rise have revolved around a single country, China. Its factories, its ports, its trillion-dollar infrastructure diplomacy have dominated how the world imagines the continent's future. Yet over the past 15 years, largely outside the headlines, a very different partnership has been taking shape. One that combines the industrial discipline of Japan with the economic momentum of India, and one that reached a new milestone recently. Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi stood beside Narendra Modi in New Delhi and committed to a target that would have seemed implausible a decade ago: 10 trillion yen, roughly $68 billion, of Japanese investment flowing into India over the next 10 years, alongside a doubling of the number of Japanese companies operating in the country. In the previous year alone, the two sides had signed around 120 business agreements, and attached to the announcement was a joint roadmap covering semiconductors, quantum technology, artificial intelligence, defense systems, clean energy, and the resilient supply chains that will determine who actually builds the 21st century economy. On paper, these two countries appear remarkably different. One has among the world's oldest populations, the other is home to its youngest major workforce. One spent half a century perfecting manufacturing, transportation, and precision engineering. The other is building highways, ports, airports, and industrial corridors at a pace rarely seen in modern history. But those differences may be precisely what makes the relationship so consequential, because increasingly, each country's greatest strength maps directly onto the other's greatest weakness. The relationship itself is not new. Japanese companies have been manufacturing in India for over 4 decades. Japanese development agencies financed some of India's most transformative infrastructure. The two governments today cooperate on everything from high-speed rail and chip supply chains to warship technology. When the projects are viewed together instead of individually, an entirely different picture emerges. This is not a story of one country helping another. It is a story of two countries systematically solving problems the other cannot solve alone, and in doing so, quietly assembling an alternative answer to the question of who leads Asia. Understanding how that happened requires starting with the problem itself, and the problem begins with people. Chapter 1. Why India and Japan need each other. Japan's core challenge can be stated in a single sentence. It is running out of working-age Japanese. The country's population peaked around 2010 and has declined every year since. The median age is approaching 50. Nearly 1 in 3 citizens is over 65. And the workforce that built the world's most sophisticated manufacturing economy is retiring considerably faster than it can be replaced. For an economy whose competitive advantage rests on skilled labor and domestic industrial depth, demographic decline is a critical issue. Japan's second challenge came from China. For nearly 30 years, many Japanese companies built factories, supply chains, and businesses there. China became one of Japan's biggest manufacturing bases and one of its largest markets. But over time, things began to change. During the 2010 dispute over the Senkaku Islands, China restricted exports of rare earth materials that Japan depended on. Japanese brands also faced consumer boycotts, military tensions around Japanese waters increased, and the COVID-19 pandemic exposed how risky it was to rely too heavily on a single country. Each of these events sent the same message. Depending too much on China had become a serious strategic risk. At the recent India-Japan summit, Prime Minister Takaichi spoke unusually openly about this, saying that economic weaponization and unfair market practices made it important for both countries to build stronger and more secure supply chains together. Such direct language is rare in diplomacy, and when leaders use it publicly, it usually means the decision has already been made behind closed doors. India offers Japan the 3 things it cannot generate internally: young workers, a growing market, and manufacturing scale outside China's reach. A median age in the late 20s. The world's largest population and its largest annual output of engineering graduates. A domestic market on track to become the 3rd largest economy this decade. A democracy with no history of conflict with Japan. The two nations have never fought each other, a distinction almost unique among major Asian powers. Japan has long been one of the world's most immigration-cautious countries. For decades, it relied on automation and productivity instead of opening its doors to large numbers of foreign workers. But as labor shortages became impossible to ignore, Tokyo began rethinking that approach. The 2025 India-Japan Summit reflected this shift by setting an ambitious goal of exchanging 500,000 people between the two countries within 5 years, including tens of thousands of skilled Indian professionals entering the Japanese workforce. For a country as cautious about immigration as Japan, it was a remarkable strategic decision. India's foreign policy prizes strategic autonomy, and it evaluates every partner on what they offer versus what they demand. Where Chinese lending has pushed borrowers like Sri Lanka into debt distress, Japanese lending built the Delhi metro, and India repaid it on schedule. The first true test of the relationship began in 2017 on a 500-kilometer stretch of western India. Chapter 2. The Bullet Train That Changed Everything. The Mumbai to Ahmedabad high-speed rail project is the most visible symbol of the partnership, and for years it was also its most convenient criticism. The foundation stone was laid in September 2017 by Prime Ministers Modi and Abe with a target of 2022, a target the project missed by a wide margin. Land acquisition in Maharashtra stalled for years amid political opposition. The pandemic froze construction. And by early 2026, official reporting acknowledged that the final cost had risen roughly 83% above initial estimates, driven largely by land values appreciating during the very delays that slowed the work. An honest account of this project has to begin there, because the delays were real and the criticism, for a time, was earned. Japan extended approximately 88,000 crore rupees through JECA at an interest rate of 0.1%, repayable over 50 years, with repayments beginning only 15 years after operation start. No commercial bank, no Western institution, and certainly no Chinese state lender offers infrastructure finance on those terms. It is closer to a wealth transfer with engineering attached than to a loan, and it came bundled with Shinkansen technology, whose operational record in Japan includes 0 passenger fatalities from derailments or collisions across 6 decades. And the project the critics describe no longer exists. In Mumbai, tunnel boring machines with 350-ton cutter heads are excavating a 21-kilometer tunnel that includes roughly 7 kilometers beneath Thane Creek, India's first undersea rail tunnel. The elevated corridor above ranks among the longest continuous rail viaducts ever built. India's railway minister has now committed to dates. The first section, Surat to Bilamora, targeted for August 15, 2027, with the full line to follow by around 2029, carrying trains at 320 kilometers per hour and cutting the Mumbai-Ahmedabad journey from 6 hours to about 2. Chapter 3. The Manufacturing Shift Away from China. In 1982, India's car industry was very limited. There were only a few old models, and people often had to wait for years to buy a car. Then India partnered with Suzuki, a Japanese company that was not yet one of the biggest names in the world. This partnership changed much more than just the car market. The Maruti 800 became India's first real car for the common family. But Suzuki's bigger contribution was the way it taught India how modern factories should work. Suzuki brought Japanese methods like Kaizen, just-in-time inventory, quality control, and better supplier training to India. Indian engineers, workers, vendors, and component makers learned these systems directly on the factory floor. Over time, these practices spread beyond Maruti and Suzuki. Supplier by supplier, they helped improve a large part of Indian manufacturing. 4 decades later, the relationship has changed in a way few people expected. India is now Suzuki's biggest market in the world. In many ways, India has become more important to Suzuki's future than Japan itself. Its plant in Hansalpur, Gujarat, is being expanded into one of Suzuki's biggest manufacturing bases globally. And now, the focus is shifting toward electric vehicles. This is where the story becomes important. Japanese-designed EVs are being built in India by Indian workers and exported to markets like Japan and Europe. The direction has started to reverse. Earlier, Japan brought cars to India. Now India is helping Japan build cars for the world, and Suzuki was only the beginning. Toyota manufactures in Karnataka. Honda, Yamaha, Nissan, Daikin, and Panasonic operate across India. Denso, one of the world's biggest auto component makers, produces in multiple Indian states. Hitachi works in construction machinery, payments, and rail technology. NEC built the undersea optical fiber cable connecting Chennai with the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, giving India's most strategic island territory a stronger digital link with the mainland. Today, well over 1,000 Japanese companies operate in India, and both countries now want to double that number within a decade. The reason is clear. Japanese companies are reducing their dependence on China. They need another country with scale, workers, demand, and export potential. Vietnam and Thailand can take some of that shift, but only India offers both a huge domestic market and the ability to build for the world. For many Japanese companies, China plus one is slowly becoming China plus India. But cars, appliances, and machinery are only one part of the story. The next and more important battleground is semiconductors, the tiny chips that power phones, cars, AI systems, weapons, satellites, and almost every modern economy. Chapter 4. From Cars to Semiconductors. When people talk about semiconductors, they usually talk about Taiwan, because Taiwan makes the world's most advanced chips. But there is another part of the story that is not discussed enough. Taiwan cannot make those chips without Japan. Japanese companies supply some of the most important materials used in chipmaking. Companies like Shin-Etsu and Sumco make ultra-pure silicon wafers, which are the base on which chips are built. Japanese companies also dominate photoresists, the special chemicals used to print tiny circuits on chips. And Tokyo Electron is one of the few companies in the world that makes equipment every advanced chip factory needs. This gives Japan serious power in the global chip industry. India is strong in a different part of the same industry. India has a large number of semiconductor design engineers, but for many years, it did not manufacture chips at scale. Now that is changing. Through the India Semiconductor Mission, India is building chip plants in Gujarat and Assam, with companies like Tata, Micron, and others involved. Dholera is also being developed as a major chip and electronics hub. This is where India and Japan fit together almost perfectly. Japan brings materials, machinery, and manufacturing expertise, while India offers engineers, demand, and new chip factories. Their 2023 semiconductor partnership also brought Renesas into a chip assembly and testing project in Sanand, Gujarat. For Japan, every new Indian chip plant is a new customer outside China's shadow. For India, Japan can help build the upstream chip ecosystem much faster than India could do alone. The logic is simple. Japan has what India needs. India has the scale Japan needs. But chips, factories, and supply chains are not just about business. They are about the future. And any future this important also needs protection. That brings the story to defense. Chapter 5. The defense partnership nobody is talking about. The word Indo-Pacific means that the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean are connected as one strategic region, but this idea was pushed most powerfully by Japan's former Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe. In 2007, he explained this vision in India's parliament, calling it the confluence of the two seas. In many ways, the modern map of Asian security was shaped by India and Japan together. Today, Indian and Japanese navies train together in areas like anti-submarine warfare, air defense, and aircraft carrier operations. But the partnership is not only about exercises. India and Japan also have an agreement that allows their militaries to use each other's fuel, supplies, and logistics. This is the kind of agreement Japan signs only with very close partners. The two countries also hold a 2+2 dialogue where their foreign and defense ministers meet together. Their fighter jets have also trained in each other's airspace. This is not a formal military alliance. India does not sign mutual defense pacts like that, but it is still a very serious security partnership. India protects key points in the Indian Ocean through which Japan's energy supplies pass. Japan protects the Pacific side. Both countries sit on different sides of the same strategic challenge. They do not need each other to fight a war. They need each other to stay strong exactly where they are. The biggest change, however, is in defense technology. For most of the post-war period, Japan avoided exporting military technology. But that rule has slowly changed. India is one of the first countries to benefit from this change. The most important example is Unicorn, an advanced naval antenna system that can reduce a warship's radar signature. Japan agreed to transfer this technology to the Indian Navy. For a country like Japan, which has been officially pacifist for decades, this is a major shift. A pacifist Japan transferring warship technology to India says more than any speech or joint statement. Still, both countries are careful with their language. They do not call this an anti-China alliance. Both India and Japan still have large economic ties with China. Their public message is not confrontation, but stability and deterrence. But deterrence has geography, and one Indian region shows the depth of this partnership better than almost anywhere else. That region is India's northeast. Chapter 6. The Northeast Gateway. India's northeast is one of the country's most sensitive regions. It has 8 states surrounded by China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. It is connected to the rest of India through the narrow Siliguri corridor. China also tries to claim Arunachal Pradesh, which makes the region even more important for India's security. For a long time, India was very careful about allowing foreign involvement in the northeast. But Japan works there, with India's full invitation. Through the India-Japan Act East Forum, created in 2017, Japan's JICA supports roads, bridges, water supply systems, and forest management projects in states like Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Tripura. These projects may not look dramatic. They are not giant skyscrapers or flashy bullet trains. They are roads, bridges, connectivity upgrades, and basic infrastructure. But their importance is huge. India has allowed Japan to work inside one of its most sensitive regions. That shows a level of trust India gives to very few major powers. The reason is simple. The Northeast is India's gateway to Southeast Asia. Better roads and bridges do not just connect villages and towns. They connect India to Myanmar, Thailand, and the wider ASEAN region. For India, this strengthens national integration and its Act East policy. For Japan, it supports a more connected and stable Indo-Pacific. This is the pattern of the entire India-Japan relationship. Japanese capital and engineering are being used exactly where India's development needs and Asia's strategic future meet. The next layer is even more futuristic. It is being built in space, artificial intelligence, and robotics. Chapter 7. Space, AI, and the Next Frontier. In August 2023, Chandrayaan-3 made India the first country to land near the moon's south pole. Just a few months later, Japan's SLIM mission showed extreme landing accuracy, touching down within about 100 meters of its target. India showed lunar landing capability. Japan showed pinpoint precision. The two breakthroughs came very close to each other. India and Japan's next major joint mission is LUPEX, also known in India as Chandrayaan-5. The division of work says everything about the partnership. ISRO will build the lander. JAXA will provide the launch vehicle and a rover built with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. The rover is designed to climb steep slopes, drill into lunar soil, and survive the harsh lunar night. The mission will study the moon's south pole, especially areas where water ice may exist. This is important because water ice could support future human missions on the moon. India's cabinet approved the mission in March 2025. The implementing arrangement was signed during Prime Minister Modi's Tokyo visit in August 2025. By 2026, ISRO teams were already working with Japan ahead of a planned launch in the 2027 to 28 window. This is a symbol of what both countries bring to the table. India brings proven low-cost space capability and lunar landing success. Japan brings precision engineering, advanced rover technology, and deep technical experience. Together, they can do something neither country would do the same way alone. Japan is one of the world leaders in robotics and precision automation, but Japan also has an aging population and a shrinking pool of young engineers. India produces engineers at a massive scale and has one of the world's largest markets for technology deployment. Japanese robotics plus Indian AI talent is a real industrial opportunity. Joint research, startup partnerships, and university collaborations are now becoming a bigger part of the relationship. Countries do not work this closely only because of factories, chips, or space missions. They work this closely when there is a deeper human connection. And India and Japan have one that goes back more than 1,000 years. Chapter 8. The Brother-Sister Diplomacy. In the year 752, an Indian monk named Bodhisattva performed the eye-opening ceremony of Japan's great Buddha at the Todaiji Temple in Nara. This was one of the most important religious events in Japanese history. Buddhism itself, which shaped Japan's culture and moral life for centuries, came from India. That matters because Japan does not see India only as a market. In a deeper cultural sense, Japan sees India as a source civilization. The modern relationship also has many important chapters. Swami Vivekananda visited Japan in 1893 and admired its discipline. Rabindranath Tagore and Japanese thinker Okakura Tenshin built an intellectual bridge between the two countries. Okakura's famous idea that Asia is one was shaped by his time in India. During India's freedom struggle, Rash Bihari Bose found refuge in Japan. Subhas Chandra Bose also worked with Japanese support to raise the Indian National Army. After World War II, when Japan's wartime leaders were tried at the Tokyo Tribunal, the only judge who gave a strong dissenting opinion was an Indian judge, Radhabinod Pal. His name is still remembered in Japan. Then in 1958, when Japan gave its first development loan to another country after the war, it chose India. This history created a foundation of trust. In recent decades, Shinzo Abe and Narendra Modi turned that trust into visible personal friendship. Abe was welcomed at the Ganga Aarti in Varanasi. Modi was hosted at Abe's private home, an honor Japan gives to very few foreign leaders. Varanasi and Kyoto also became sister cities, linking two ancient spiritual centers. When Shinzo Abe was assassinated in 2022, India declared a national day of mourning. That was a rare gesture for a foreign leader. This is why the India-Japan relationship is not just built on contracts, it is built on memory, respect, and civilizational connection. Today, the human bridge is becoming even stronger. Japanese language programs are growing in India. Skill India-Japan programs are training Indian workers for Japanese industry. Indian professionals are moving to cities like Tokyo and Yokohama. Japanese managers and investors are moving into India. Anime is becoming popular in India, while yoga and Indian food are becoming more visible in Japan. The 500,000-person exchange target gives this movement a number. But the direction was already clear. India and Japan are not only moving goods, money, and technology, they are moving people, skills, and culture. And that brings up the big question that many viewers may already be thinking about. Can India overtake Japan? Chapter 9. Can India overtake Japan? By total GDP, India has already crossed Japan in some measures or is in the process of doing so. This created big headlines in both countries. But the real question is not whether India can overtake Japan. That is the wrong way to look at the relationship. Overtaking means both countries are running the same race. But India and Japan are not on the same track. India has something Japan cannot easily recover: a young population, a huge domestic market, and decades of growth ahead. Japan has experience. India has momentum. Japan has precision. India has scale. Japan has deep technology. India has demand, talent, and expansion. The real question is not whether India can overtake Japan. The real question is whether India and Japan together can build something much bigger than either country could build alone. Every chapter of this story points in that direction. It is a partnership between two economies whose strengths fit together at the right time. But the relationship is not perfect. Trade between India and Japan is still much smaller than their trade with China. Some big projects, including the bullet train, have faced delays and cost issues. Japanese companies can be cautious. India's regulations can still be difficult, but the direction is now becoming clear. For many years, people assumed that Asia's future would be shaped around one main power, and every other country would have to adjust around it. The India-Japan relationship challenges that idea. It shows another model, not China's model, not the West's model, but an India-Japan model. There is also a financial side to this shift. For decades, most trade between countries like India and Japan moved through the US dollar. Now India and Japan are moving toward a direct yen-rupee settlement framework. The idea is simple. Indian and Japanese businesses should be able to settle more trade directly in rupees and yen, instead of first converting through the US dollar. This does not mean the dollar will disappear from India-Japan trade. The dollar is still the world's dominant trade currency, and many companies will continue to use it because it is liquid and widely accepted. But even creating an option for direct yen-rupee settlement matters. For Indian companies, it can reduce conversion costs and make payments with Japanese partners simpler. For Japanese companies investing in India, it can make it easier to move money into Indian factories, supply chains, and infrastructure projects. And for both governments, it supports the larger goal of building a financial system that is less dependent on one currency and more resilient to global shocks. Thank you for watching till the end. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who follows geopolitics closely.